breaking news. Breaking news from the House of Representatives of the United States of America. This is actually breaking while we're on with y'all. It was going to be sort of a news bite thing. Let's work it in. Rashad, what's going on in the House of Representatives? Are you there right now? Pretend you're there. Like, pretend you're there.
Reporting live from D.C. It is very white around here. So this is actually, I think, supposed to be the future section. So we're going to the future before we go back into the past.
But it's happening now. So,
it's happening now. As you mentioned, so that the House voted on, there you go. The House passes a landmark bill decriminalizing marijuana, according to the New York Times. So this was a bill that I think was first introduced in 2019, and it was supposed to come up for vote in September, but got delayed with the pandemic. So, I mean, this is pretty much, I know the Senate would still have to vote for it.
That's a big bag of weed right there. Yeah. Go ahead. I had to.
I don't think that's what
is that what they voted on that. That's pretty nice of them, House of Representatives.
Flashbacks here. I don't know.
Thank you. I am long retired, sir. I did inhale though. So continue.
All right. So So what was I saying? I don't even remember what I was saying now. I'm just distracted by this picture.
I'm dry snitching over here on the podcast. Go ahead.
All right. So
hey, I live in New Jersey, baby. We're good here.
You got a couple more weeks, right?
Go ahead.
All right. So the Senate would still have to vote for this. Who knows how that's going to happen? But this is sort of a landmark achievement for our politics. When you think about, we've been living in what's really like an 80-year-long war on drugs, where a lot of people bring it back to Nixon and Ronald Reagan, but it goes, as we've reported on, it goes far back, much further than that. And so, for the House to vote on this bill is huge. So what it would do is obviously it would decriminalize marijuana. It would also expunge the records of people who were convicted, and that would be on the federal level. But also what it's trying to accomplish is it's also trying to build back the communities that were still hit the hardest from the war on drugs. So those are disenfranchised communities. And especially when you consider that, I think the ACLU reported that Black Americans are 3.6 times more likely than their white counterparts to be arrested for marijuana. So there's obviously racial disparities in arrest rates, even though I think studies have shown that usage is basically very similar between the two groups. So I think what it does is, so it would have a 5% tax on cannabis items, whatever you want to call it, and that would go into some sort of fund. And then that fund would be used to build back these communities, offer social services support. And also, I think they want to, you mentioned equity before, Manny. They want Black Americans to become more involved in the cannabis business, because right now it's overwhelmingly white people and rich white people.
Are there any restrictions? I don't know if you know this offhand. I'm putting you on the spot. Are there any restrictions to owning a cannabis business if you've been previously convicted of a felony, for example?
That's a good question, but I think this is potentially trying to solve that. This is potentially trying to solve that.
Because because if you have, low-level drug offenders, primarily Black and brown, obviously disproportionately so throughout history, and then because of that, they're then now ineligible to own the business or partake in the business. That expunging is super important.
That's absolutely critical,
especially because I think marijuana arrests still make up about 40% of all drug arrests. And as we know, and as we've reported, a huge segment of the federal prison population is there because of drug crimes.
Right.
So this is huge. It's also, it's not just a criminal justice reform measure. It seems to also be an economic justice type of law too, which is important. And especially in this times, a crippling economy, especially one where the rich are getting richer despite a recession, and everybody else is struggling. So I think so. The reason
there's a lot of economy in that big ass bag of weed.
So we put this in the future section because we want people to keep their attention on this issue and see what the Senate is going to do. And just like what things like Color Change does, they try to build campaigns and keep up the pressure on the politicians that are supposed to be working for us.
Absolutely. Is this slated to be voted on this session, or are we kind of lame ducked out, or is this going to kind of depend on what happens in Georgia?
I think the big question is if Mitch McConnell will even bring it up for a vote.
That guy can do that.
He's still around.
That guy
is still around.
We don't want to vote on it, but it
Yeah,
passed in the other. But it passed in the other house of the actual Congress. No, it doesn't matter. All right,
which has some bipartisan support too. This isn't just obviously the Democrats control the House, but it has bipartisan support.
Hasn't it always? Hasn't marijuana been like the one thing that everyone can kind of agree on?
I think the latest poll from ACLU was 2/3 of Americans believe that marijuana should be legalized.
All right. Well, cross your fingers, smokers. We'll see. Maybe by April 20th. Maybe, you never know. So indeed, let's keep an eye on that. That is interesting because it's an economic thing, but very much tied into social justice, like you said, economic justice. And we'll keep an eye on the future.